Going to be a video about clickbait or trying to get more views or build my brand or anything like that. I just have some stuff on my heart that I feel like we need to talk about. So I'm gonna drop that intro and we're gonna chop it up. Hey, yo, what's going on? My name is Ruslan. I'm a hip-hop artist, creative entrepreneur. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire fellow creative artists and entrepreneurs to live out God's dream for their life. And we tend to cover all kinds of different stuff on this channel, from music, reviews on Fridays with our Fan Love Friday, to some social issues and, a little bit of health, wellness, that kind of stuff, everything in between. But I need to let you guys know something. Some of you guys think that I enjoy having the videos with the Derek Miners and the propagandas and talking about challenging issues, that I enjoy pressing into kind of polarizing spaces. And despite what anybody may think, I actually don't always feel comfortable talking about race or politics, especially politics. And I actually hate it. Like, I hate the idea because it's such a polarizing topic and it's so divisive, and so many of us are just kind of stuck in our own echo chambers where we're not really critically thinking through our positions. And I tend to be at this very interesting intersection where I make hip hop music, but I'm a Christian. And so I attract a hip hop audience that's Christian, that is also very diverse, and a lot of white evangelicals. But my entire experience has been not that, like I've had a very different experience. Those of you guys that don't know my story, hello, my name is Ruslan. I'm originally from a little country called Azerbaijan, Baku. It used to be part of this former Soviet Union, and in the late 80s, there was something called the pogroms of Baku, where it was an attempted genocide against my people. If you guys watch my interview with Rufat, we talk about it a bit. So me and my family actually came out to the United States as immigrants, as refugees, and we fled. Rufat always jokes. He says we fled, but we came on a Delta. But we came over here to the United States, and I moved to San Diego. Man, that's why I'm wearing my San Diego hat. Immersed myself, didn't really have a choice, but really got into hip-hop culture, hip-hop music. I was in a predominantly black and brown neighborhood. So my entire upbringing, my closest friends, my family have been all black and brown people. So I've am viewed societally as the racial construct of what we would call white, because of my appearance, my fair-skinned appearance, even though my dad looks a bit more Middle Eastern, because he's Armenian. But my experience has been that of an immigrant, that of a refugee, that of poverty, and that of being very close to black and brown communities pretty much my entire life. And so shout out to all the people in the live stream. Shout out to all the Patreon. I see you guys. If you guys got questions, you want me to touch on anything specific, I'm not going to go super long today, but I wanted to take some time out and talk about this stuff because it's not comfortable to talk about. But I feel like I have a responsibility as someone who harnesses a diverse audience to talk about these things, especially in light of what has happened recently with Donald Trump, with the accusations of racism. What is racism? Of him telling 4 United States senators to go back to where they came from and fix those countries before they come over here. 3 of those United States senators were born here. It's a tough season, and it's only going to get worse. And so I want to just share my thoughts. They're neither right nor wrong. I want to give you some of my political leanings in case you care, and who I'm actually looking at as a candidate. And I want to give you guys a book recommendation that I think could actually help all of us come together to hopefully speak to each other and not at each other. So I'm going to read the definition of racism to you. Because I think if we're going to say what is or isn't racist, I think it's important to know what is the definition of racism. So the definition of racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. So prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on a belief that one's own race is superior. So that's the working definition of racism. Now, I've had quite a few conversations with people on Twitter about this, and I said, hey, this is pretty overtly racist what Donald Trump has said, in my opinion. This is all my opinion in terms of go back to your country. As an immigrant, when somebody told you to go back to your country, that's as a like shy of calling somebody like the N-word or whatever racial epithet that there is. That's a pretty like disgusting thing to say, right? It just is. Now, if you're a Donald Trump supporter, I'm gonna let you off the hook. Listen, if you think he's good on policy, if you voted for him because he's the lesser of two evils, because you think he's better than Hillary, because the economy's doing well, regardless on what your reasons for voting for him, I'm going to let you off the hook. I am not mad at you for voting for him. I did not vote for Hillary. I did not vote for Trump. But this isn't to attack Donald Trump supporters because I actually empathize, and I'll get to why I think one of the biggest reasons he won. But to say and be under the delusion that telling somebody to go back to their country, to say that is not a racist statement is literally sci-fi alternate universe talk. Like, not to be the conspiracy theorist, but it's like loony to say that. And here's the deal. There's a great dude named Scott Adams. He's a trained hypnotist. He's a trained hypnotist. He's a persuasion expert. You guys should go watch some of his Vlad TV interviews, all kinds of interviews. He predicted Trump winning, the earliest person to say Trump was going to win a year and a half out. And what he said was that Trump is a master communicator, that the way he's able to communicate is he's never seen anybody hold persuasion techniques this powerful. The way he speaks, the way he simplifies things, the way he name calls. He said he's never seen anything like this ever before. And so I think it's important to know that there is there is something happening in the mentality of groupthink. There's something happening where we don't align ourselves. And so at the very least, to make a statement like that, to say go back to your countries, or here, I'll hit you guys with another one. I see Lavoisier. Shout out to Lavoisier. Grow the heck up. He said he doesn't think it's racist. That's fine. Hit you guys with another one for him to say after the Charlottesville situation, where the guys with tiki torches had someone ran a car and killed people, to say that there's people on both sides, good people, right? Good, fine people. Whether or not you think or I think it's racist, here's the truth. White nationalist, KKK, neo-Nazi groups are embracing these sentiments, regardless on what Trump may mean by them, regardless on what we may think of them or whatever. If you actually go and look at the message boards, don't push back with it's the liberal media. No, go actually and check out white nationalists, alt-right, neo-Nazi groups and see what they think about Trump and how they interpret those statements. They interpret them as affirming of their view system, of their worldview. This is translated to dog whistling, right? So you're saying something that you could deny, and you could have plausible deniability and say, well, I didn't mean it that way. I just meant they can go and they should go back to their ethnic backgrounds and improve those places and come back with what they've learned. And that's all I meant. Or you could say, well, I didn't tell the audience to chant, send her back. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that they did that. Yet you stood there silently for 13 seconds and let the chant go on, versus someone like John McCain for when he was running against President Obama and the birther conspiracies were coming out and they were saying he was a Muslim. John McCain stopped and corrected that person and rebuked that person, which, you know, John McCain is a national hero, and he actually had some kind of background, you know. And so I think it's important for us to look at this from a macro standpoint. And even if you don't think he is a racist, at the very least he's dog whistling. At the very least he's being very ignorant and just not presidential with his statements. And so, you know, Voss, if you want to play devil's advocate, that's you. That's on you, bro. Do you think that Trump, being an older guy, do you believe he's ignorant of how today works? Because to me, it seems like he doesn't get what's wrong with his words. Yeah, I think there's a degree of that. But I also think he's very calculated. And I also think he knows what he's doing. And he's saying the things that are going to get his base riled up. Here's what I think, though. I think it's a crappy thing to run on, considering that the economy is doing good, according to how they measure it with their metrics, that the stock market is up, that there's a lot of stuff he's doing for churches and evangelicals and the pro-life movement. There's a lot of things he could run in as positives, but he keeps reverting back to these to these tactics. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, the definition of racism: prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. One's own race, one's own point of view, one's own mentality, that no one's allowed to disagree with you, whether it's on policy. And here's, by the way, the Green New Deal that they're pushing, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like the whole like progressive tax of 70% against anybody that makes over $10 million. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the policies or a lot of the sentiments that those four young senators are saying. What I'm against is that we are going to otherize anybody who disagrees with our position, and we're going to live in an echo chamber and only say the things that we're comfortable with. And so that's where I think I have an issue with this whole thing. Is that it's deeper than just the surface on, well, he didn't call them the N-word, as if racism only plays out in the N-word. It's a nationalistic viewpoint that places one demographic of people as superior. And again, let's look at how the stuff at the border is being handled, the inhumane conditions of on the border. By the way, again, not a Democrat, didn't vote for Hillary, don't think she was a better choice. I think they were both terrible options. And so I just think it's just a messy time that we're in. And I think that above all else is that we should be seeking to understand. We should be seeking to have conversation and have dialogue. If you don't know any immigrants, if you don't know any people of color, if you don't know and you don't have relationship with people in it's important to have that. And even if it's virtually, Lavoisier, I just said I disagreed with their policies. I also disagree with anti-Semitic statements they made or elusive things that they may have said that implied that they supported Al-Qaeda. I'm against those things as well, bro. I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I think you could be against evil, period. You know what I'm saying? I think you could be against evil, period. I think that's what we should be. We should be standing up for justice when we see something wrong happen. And that is my issue with Christians, is they're very dismissive, is that they'll get really riled up when it's a issue that's convenient for them, but yet we're just blindly delusional to the fact that, our president says some wild stuff and he's irresponsible with his language. We can't acknowledge that. For whatever reason, the evangelical community has trouble acknowledging that. That's unfortunate. That can't continue. We have to stand up and say, listen, those of you guys that are Trump supporters, I voted for you for A, B, and C, but this right here is not okay. This right here is not okay. You know what I mean? We can't keep doing this. We can't separate families at the borders. You can't do that. You know what I mean? And he changed his mind on that, right? When people spoke up, his own wife spoke up. Changed his mind on that. And so I think he's smart. I think he's shrewd. I just think he goes back to what he knows, which is headlines, which is being polarizing, which is being divisive. And I don't even think he needs to do that, unfortunately. And I think that's actually going to be his own kryptonite, is his mouth and the way he carries himself on Twitter and social media. It's just a very wild time that we're living in. So listen, I don't want to harp on that too much. I'm trying to get to a point of, let's be empathetic. Let's speak to each other and not at each other. Let's have conversation. Let's be respectful. One of the reasons you guys are seeing me have different perspectives, like my buddy Rufat, who's an ex-Christian rapper turned atheist comedian, and you guys are like, what's the point of having an atheist on your channel? So that you guys could see what it's like to have people in your life that you disagree with, but you still love them and you still embrace them and you still respect them and you still honor them, even if they may feel like they're crossing the line against you. That is the gospel. That is Jesus. That is how we are supposed to live our lives. Whereas that's not what's happening. Is we're otherizing. We're otherizing groups that we disagree with, and we're name calling and we're bullying and we're being very dismissive of anybody that disagrees with our position. And that's just unfortunate. That's sad. And so the reason why I think Trump won is because he ran on a lot of problematic issues, except I think he blamed the wrong people. This idea that immigrants are taking the jobs and that's why the economy is failing, or that's why people don't have jobs. It's just not true. It just isn't. I just went to New York. I spent a week in New York. You know who's driving the Uber and the Lyft cars? You know who's working the service jobs? It's not white people. It's immigrants. Yep, you guessed it right. It's immigrants. They're serving a need that is oftentimes what white Americans don't want to do, and they're doing it more efficiently at a lower cost, and they're not taking from the community. They're adding to the community. They're adding to the economy. Here is what we should be concerned about. And here's where I think Trump got it right. He just blamed the wrong people. The jobs are going to go away. They're saying in the next 3 to 4 years, 33% of our malls are going to shut down. Retail jobs are going to go away. Trucking jobs are going to go away. Assembly lines jobs are going to go away. Why? Why are these things going away? Now, some of it is because we're outsourcing to other countries, and there should be tariffs on that, and there should be a way that makes sense economically for both countries. But more importantly, this is what's happening: is automation. Automation is what's pushing the jobs away. So trucking is not going to be an industry in a couple years. But I think they're projecting by 2030, trucking will not be an industry. That's like the second or third largest industry for jobs and people being self-employed and owning their trucking company and making a decent living. That's not going to exist in a minute. That's going to be gone. So why? Automation. Who's benefiting from automation? The tech companies, the big corporations, right? As the gap between wealth inequality, if you will, and I'm not a socialist, and I don't think we should tax the rich at 70% or whatever. I think that's a terrible policy. But what's going to happen is, especially if you're in the big cities, go to LA, go to New York, there's not a lot of middle class. There's wealthy people making north of six figures, and there's poor. That's going to continue happening. Automation is going to be what potentially destroys our economy, is how we're going to lose jobs, how we're going to lose portions of it's like, imagine 1 out of every 3 of your malls is going to be done. It's going to be done in the next 3 or 4 years. Like, that is going to happen. That's going to happen. Like, the trucking industry is not. So it's automation that's the real issue. And so he got it right. Yeah, jobs are going away. Yeah, it's tough in people in middle America. Yeah, it's hard. Yes, he got it right. He just blamed the wrong people. He blamed the wrong people. And so if you guys care for what I for what I lean towards politically. The candidate I'm keeping my eye on, he's not a mainline candidate. I think a lot of the mainline Democratic candidates are not the best options personally. Whether it's Bernie with the democratic socialism or Biden, who's just kind of a creepy guy. I'm keeping my eye on Andrew Yang and his freedom dividend that he's presenting, and someone that is actually being pragmatic and actually has vision and the most policy written. And unfortunately, he's not doing very well in the polls right now. I think he's like the 10th. Andrew Yang is the only one talking about job automation, because he said, hey, Trump actually got it right. These problems were real. He just blamed the wrong people. He blamed the wrong the wrong sectors of the society. Who knows how much Apple and Amazon paid in taxes last year as corporations? They didn't pay anything in taxes as corporations. They paid nothing. So the biggest corporations aren't actually paying a corporate tax. Why is that? Those are the type of loopholes that need to be fixed. Those are the type of issues that need to be resolved. Sending immigrants that have been here for 20, 30 years, like in the case of What Up RG, and he on his album Raul, he talks about his dad. His dad was here for like 20 years. Deporting people like that, whose family is here, whose kids were born here. That's not what's going to fix our economy, guys. That's not what's going to make America great again. That's just not. As ICE is having raids all over the country. The immigrants aren't the ones to blame. The minorities aren't the ones to blame. Automation is what's going to do us in if we don't do something about it. And so again, I'm being empathetic to the people who are in these middle America towns. I'm understanding that there are things that are not good. And yes, Lavoisier, I know that Obama deported immigrants as well. I don't really understand what that has to do with what we're talking about, considering that, that's the pushback. Well, Trump is racist. Well, Hillary's a murderer. Okay. Trump's separating families at the border, and these people are in inhumane conditions, and he's deporting people. But Obama killed babies, and Obama, we're not talking about Obama. Like, Obama wasn't the perfect president. I don't co-sign everything Obama stood for. It's right. The pushback is like, listen, here's the information. Here's where we're at. How do we move on from here? How do we remain civil? And I think we have to talk to each other. Here's a great book that I want you guys to, if you can, is to check out. It's a book called The Third Option. It's by Pastor Miles McPherson here in San Diego, the Rock Church in San Diego. Pastor Miles McPherson wrote this amazing book called The Third Option, and it's Hope for a Racially Divided Nation. I've read it. I had an early copy. I wrote a song. I'm actually going to debut the music video the song is on Indie Jones 3. The video and the song is inspired by this book, and it's talking about my own journey and having a son who's black and my wife being black. So I want you guys to really sit with this and check this out and look at the song is I didn't come up with the concept, but the song is like the idea of the third option is that we don't have to be that divided that instead of saying I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right, that there could be a third option. And instead of dismissing people as racist, there's woke people and there's racist people. I don't think the majority of Americans are racist. I think the majority of Americans are just unaware of their own superiority complex and their own privilege. And privilege is not a bad word. Privilege does not mean guilt. Privilege just means that if you were born into a family with two parents, that's a privilege you have. That's an advantage you have. If you were born into a family that the mom got to stay home and be a homemaker, that's a privilege. That's an advantage you have. You can have different privileges. And if your family was divorced, or you endured trauma, or you saw someone get killed, that's a disadvantage you have. That's all privilege means. So those of you guys that are like, triggered. He said my privilege. Listen, I did not fall in line with a lot of the stereotypes of white privilege, but though I could acknowledge that in the lens of this society, under the racial construct, I benefit from appearing like a white male. That's okay. That doesn't mean I got to feel bad about that, right? And so we can honor each other. We can love each other. We can speak well of each other. And we can say, you know what, we could agree to disagree. And that's what this channel is going to be about. This channel, you're going to see me having people I disagree with. I'm actually hoping to have the homie Lavoisier on here. I'm hoping to have my friend Brett Rail, who I just put out a song with, who's a Trump supporter and is very passionate about that. I actually did a whole interview with him, and unfortunately the audio got messed up. It was up for like a couple hours and it got deleted. I'm going to have conversations, and I'm going to show us that we could agree to disagree, and we could be civil, and we could be loving, and we can be compassionate. And so it's Tyler, it's not about the media controlling your family, propaganda. It's about being a good human being, my G. It's about actually living your life like Jesus and knowing that Jesus had all kinds of people in his life that disagreed with him, and he still loved them, and he's still gentle with them, and he was still patient with them. So it's not about being woke or any of the cliche things. Is like, let's just, these aren't politics. To bring it all full circle, the reason why I don't like talking about race and politics is because they're not really conversations that I care about. They're not really conversations about race and politics. They're humanitarian conversations. They're conversations about life, the value of life. Like when we talk about pro-life positions, people go say, whoa, that's so political. No, it's not. It's actually humanitarian. So when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and some of you guys are triggered just me saying that a lot, that's not political. That's humanity. That's human. These are human issues. These are human issues. And so we're going to continue pressing into these things. I'm going to continue creating some content that's going to challenge you. And I hope that you would be open and humble enough to follow me along on this journey as I'm being challenged, as I'm growing. And so, yeah, man. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Check out the book, The Third Option. I'm going to drop the music video. Those of you guys that disagree with me, maybe you understanding and seeing my son, and that I'm really thinking about the next generation.